guys, Katie Peppy of Diamond Canine Dog Training, and I have a topic today that I've been wanting to talk about and just haven't gotten around to it until now. So here it is. I'm going to try to keep it brief and painless. I always say that and it never is. But dogs that won't eat. Ooh. Hot button topic lately. My gosh, this has always been a thing, but lately I have had so many people asking me about it, emailing me about it, sending their dogs to me for training, and it kind of comes up at drop off because they have all this stuff for me to put in their dog's food to help stimulate their appetite, which is fine. I feed people's dogs pretty much whatever they tell me to when they drop their dog off. So don't worry if you have a board and train booked and you're like, oh my God, she's not going to feed my dog no, I will. I'll give your dog whatever you want me to give your dog. But you don't have to if you don't want to. And if you don't want to, or if you find that you're stuck in a cycle of trying to get your dog to eat and it's just getting worse, I want to talk about why that is so you can dig your way out of that hole. So first of all, let me just say that I don't know if I've ever seen an underweight dog. They're out there. I know they're out there, but most of them are strays. So underweight dogs are very, very rare. On the flip side of that, overweight dogs are extremely common. So nutrition and physique is not my field. I try to stay in my lane. So even if I know someone's overfeeding their dog, I'm unlikely to say a whole lot about that. It's not my dog. I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not a vet. I'm not any of those things. But I have seen a lot of dogs, and I do have an idea, I'd like to think, of when maybe we're giving the dog too much. Free feeding is too much, by the way, so we'll just get that out of the way. There's a lot of reasons why free feeding might not be the best way to go. So if it's working for you and your dog, great, do it. But it's certainly not my preference for a lot of reasons. But anyways, if you have a dog who just isn't that into their food, like, maybe they don't finish their meals or they even turn their nose up at some of their meals completely, guess what? That's normal. So a lot of dogs do that. It's not a big deal unless you have an underweight dog, okay? So if your dog seems healthy in every respect, except they're just not eating that much, don't worry about it. If it's a really sudden, drastic change, then maybe you want to call the vet, like more than a couple days go by and there's no change. By all means, call your vet, make sure your dog's okay. But if this is just sort of a natural evolution for your dog as they mature, they don't eat much, don't worry about it. It's normal. So here's something a lot of people don't realize. Growing puppies often eat more than adult dogs. So we kind of have in our head, and it makes sense that small puppies would eat less than grown dogs, but they're growing. They're eating more than grown dogs a lot of the time. So I think it kind of catches us off guard when our puppy matures and all of a sudden they don't need all those calories anymore. Okay, so that is really common. That happens. And so what happens then is our puppy gets a little bit older, they don't need the food anymore, so they kind of turn their nose up at it, and now you go, oh, well, it's been a couple days and she hasn't really eaten much, so maybe I'll just mix in a little water or a little chicken broth and just see if that helps. And it does, and so we go, okay. Then the next day they turn their nose up at it again, so you go, oh, well, I'll mix that chicken broth in there again, so you can see the cycle starting, right? And so now the dog has learned, oh, well, this is pretty good, right? So now when you give them regular food, they don't want it. They just don't want it, right? And so now you have to put chicken broth in your dog's food if you want them to eat. And eventually, They might even, because they're going to get kind of bored with that too. It's going to get kind of old, and they're going to fall into that saying, well, I'm not really hungry today, I'm not going to eat, because that's normal. And then you go, oh, well, maybe if I put some chicken and rice in there and mix that in, maybe she'll eat that, right? And so now you're cooking for your dog, or you're putting in that wet food for your dog, like cans of wet food to stimulate the appetite. And now you might get yourself into a cycle where they just don't eat if you don't put the wet food in there, or you don't cook the chicken and put the chicken in there, or the rice, or whatever it is. And so we build this resistance to just eating their food, okay? Which isn't great for a few reasons, because now, in the first place, you're encouraging your dog to eat food that they're telling you they don't need. So they're telling you they don't need those calories, and you're finding a way to get them to eat it anyway. So that's not great, right? And you're also making it just harder to feed your dog, because now you get to put all this stuff in their food, or they turn their nose up at it, they don't want it. So that's not great either. So let me just tell you how I handle dogs that don't eat a lot. I don't stress about it. I just don't turn it into an issue. So I put a reasonable amount of food in their bowl. This is for my dogs. Client dogs, doesn't matter. I put the food in the bowl. I put it into their kennel. I say, break. Go ahead, eat your food. I leave them alone for 15 minutes. When I come back, I take the bowl out of the kennel. It doesn't matter if it's empty, full, half full. It comes out, and that's it until supper. Okay, which is 10 hours later, probably. Supper time, food goes back in, a reasonable amount of food, whatever a good meal size is for that dog. 15 minutes, I come back, I take the bowl out. So that's it. You get 15 minutes to eat your meal, and then that's it until the next meal. And some dogs, especially if they are anxious, and uncomfortable in general, like that's just their personality, some dogs will turn their nose up at food for a solid 4 to 5 days. Okay? I'm offering them food. They don't want it. They don't want it. They're not humans. They're not built like humans. So dogs can easily fast that long, most of them. Some dogs have sensitive stomachs and, it upsets their tummy, but most dogs, they can go days without eating, and it's fine. So I would never do that intentionally. I would never withhold food for days unless there was some medical reason I was supposed to, I guess maybe, but they always eat when they get hungry. Your dog will eat, I promise you. Unless there's something really wrong with your dog, they'll eat. So don't worry about it so much. And what you can do, my advice would probably be to give them smaller meals than usual. Okay, so whatever you've been giving your dog, maybe cut that in half, so that when they do start eating, they're more likely to clean their bowl and be looking forward to the next meal, right? And so then you can slightly increase the meal size each day until you get to a point where maybe they're not always finishing it again, and then that's enough. You don't need to give them 4 cups of food for each meal. Okay, so cut back the size of your meal a little bit, and just offer it to them twice a day, and that's it. And don't give them, milk bones and pup cups and all this stuff in between. Like, just meals. Like, eliminate the treats for a little bit if your dog is kind of turning their nose up at their meals. So otherwise, it's like the child that can eat the candy bars and the strawberry shortcakes, but then mealtime rolls around, I don't want it. Right? So if your dog has a real low caloric needs, then you can't fill them up on treats all day. So, but that's my 2 cents on dogs that won't eat. So if you're in that pickle now, you don't have to wean your dog off from the wet food and the chicken. Just take the food of choice that you want to give your dog and just feed it to them. And if they don't eat it, take it out of the kennel and try again next mealtime. And next mealtime is not in an hour. It's not in 3 hours. It's, 8 to 12 hours later. That's the next mealtime. So by having food available all the time, all the time, all the time, it loses its value. They don't want it. It's available all the time. So you have to add some value to the meal by making it this thing that only comes for a short time and then it's gone, right? It'll come back, but it's gonna be a little while. So that's it, guys. That's my 2 cents. So get your dogs eating.